For the Camarillo City Council. Good evening, and thank you for participating in the Candidates Forum. The candidate selection process, as far as order, was a random selection, and you will each have 2 minutes to introduce yourself. We will start with, from my stage left, moving to the right. We will then have 5 questions, and you will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Keep in mind, this is not a debate, it is a forum, so please stick your answers to the question that is asked. To conclude the forum, you will have 2 minutes to give a closing statement and tell the voters why they should select you. And we're going to start with Tony Tremblay and question the introduction. Your introduction.
Good evening. My wife Kathy and I have lived in Camarillo for 33 years. We love our city. Kathy just retired in June of this year after 27 years as a public school kindergarten teacher, and she was with Pleasant Valley School District. I've been an attorney for 33 years, principally representing local public agencies. Much of my work is in environmental law, and principally in water law and regulatory issues. I help clients navigate complex laws, and I help them solve problems. I strongly believe in the collaboration process whenever possible, and particularly when it involves public agencies that are serving our residents. I've devoted many years to leading nonprofits in Camarillo. I've served as the chair of the board of directors for the St. John's Pleasant Valley Hospital Foundation and for the Camarillo Chamber of Commerce. I spent many years of service in youth sports as well as in Boy Scouts. I'm currently vice chair of the board of directors for Camarillo Hospice. Camarillo is a wonderful place, but we can do better. I want to bring a new and fresh perspective to the City Council and focus on 4 things. First, opening up communications between the City Council and residents through regular town halls, the use of social media, and advanced calendaring. Secondly, to have the City Council get out of its passive mode and actively engage with other agencies, other public agencies which are serving our city residents. Next, attraction and retention of business, including streamlining permitting. I oppose new fees on business and hiring a full-time economic development coordinator for the city. And fourth, quality of life issues, including open space protection and increasing economic vitality within the city. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Ventura County Star, Supervisor Kathy Long, and many other local elected officials who have known me for many years and are confident that I would bring great leadership skills to this City Council. I look forward to talking about the issues tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Jameson, your introduction.
Thank you. My name is Jameson Lingle. I'm running for City Council because I want to make this the best Camarillo for everyone. For the best Camarillo, we need to work to reduce our traffic congestion, secure our water future, and protect open space. For the best Camarillo for business in particular, we need a tax holiday for new business starting in or business moving into Camarillo. We are privileged to be able to do that, and so I think we need to use our wealth to leverage to compete strategically for new business. As a professional policy educator and advocate, I have effectively worked to influence policy that's benefited seniors, people with disabilities, working families, and the environment, and now I'd like to work on policy that benefits you. I live in Camarillo with my wife, Suzanne, a local nurse at both Camarillo and Pleasant Valley hospitals. Together, we're raising a wild and smart and beautiful 2-year-old, and we have another child on the way. I'm proud to say I've been endorsed by Supervisor Kathy Long, Supervisor Steve Bennett, Supervisor Linda Parks, Meryl Berge of SOAR, Luis Roberts, President of Save Conejo Creek, and a number of other folks. I'm particularly proud to be the only candidate that's been endorsed by the leaders of SOAR, because I'm the only candidate that's been actively involved in getting SOAR on the ballot. In fact, I'm actually spending a significant portion of my own campaign funds to educate voters on the difference between the real SOAR measures and the fake measure designed to get rid of SOAR. And before I finish, let me just say this, that to me, this election cycle, from the measures that we vote on, to who we elect for supervisor, to who we elect for city council, will have a dramatic effect on the amount of development Camarillo will have in the very near future. We have to be careful to only approve smart growth, and it's hard to have smart growth when we have so much uncertainty regarding the future of our traffic congestion and our water security. So I'm asking you to vote yes on Measure C, yes on Measure J, no on Measure F, and yes on Jameson for City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lingle. Mr. Little, your introduction.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Bill Little. I'm completing my first term on the City Council of Camarillo and running for re-election. As many of you will remember, I served as your city manager for 11 years, during the time when Camarillo was struggling to get back on its feet financially after some very bad investment losses. Today, unlike other cities, Camarillo is very well off financially. Much of this is due to the planning and studies which we undertook to attract projects such as the Camarillo Premium Outlets and the Target Center, which generate substantial sales taxes. We also established an investment committee to oversee the city's investments, and as a result of our efforts, the city was awarded a AAA bond rating by Standard & Poor's, which it maintains today. We are fortunate to have many wonderful nonprofit organizations serving our community, and I've been involved with a few of them. I've served on the board of directors and as president of the Camarillo Boys and Girls Club, the Camarillo Ranch Foundation, the Friends of the Camarillo Library, and St. John's Pleasant Valley Hospital Board. I was also on the committee to help plan the new high school, Rancho Campana. The past 4 years has taught me that being a city council member is different than being a city manager. It involves working as a cohesive group to achieve results. While we may have significant differences of opinions or approaches to issues, we manage to reach workable solutions. My approach to dealing with council's issues is the same that I used as city manager, analyzing the facts and attempting to develop common sense solutions to solving problems. I have lived in Camarillo with my wife Mary for 28 years. I've been involved in either city government or in helping community organizations during that entire time. My achievements are a public record, of which I'm very proud, and I intend to continue that record as long as I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Mr. Lormer.
My name is Matt Lormer. I want to thank the Chamber for holding this meeting tonight. I've lived in this community for 20 years. I've attended the City Council meetings for 8 years. The question is, are the citizens' needs being met in the community, and are we better off than we were 4 years ago? Let's start with the number one priority. Crime is up 18%, assaults are up 33%. I'm the only candidate that has offered a solution. We need a bike patrol, a police substation, and we need monthly meetings with the police department. You know, when we move on to the next thing, sewer is the most important thing. People do not want to see massive houses. During the Canal Creek project, I was the only one that spoke up against that project, and I was sitting in the audience just like you were. Seniors want a new senior center, and they've been waiting for 10 years, and it needs to happen. And let's talk about businesses. You know, if you look around town, you see a lot of empty buildings, but you know what businesses need in this community? Their user fees have gone through the roof. And for example, a variance, it went from $1,500 to $4,500. That's an example of a really bad increase. Tonight, you will have many choices, but I want to remind you to please look at the candidate statement because you get a really good insight of who has an idea of what's going on in this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lormer. Mr. Kildee.
Hello, I'm Kevin Kildee. I'd like to thank the Chamber for hosting this. I'm married to my wife Janet, who's here tonight. I have two wonderful daughters, Miranda and Madeline. I not only live in Camarillo, but I work here as well. I'm the owner of a retail clothing business, Bob Kildee Clothing, which has been in Camarillo since 1954. Service has been our family motto for decades. I have the ability to reach complex issues and reach consensus. In my opinion, experience does matter. As a council member, I have a proven record of supporting strong economic policies, maintaining public safety, supporting a strong job base, and working on water issues. I've been lucky enough to serve on the committee that brought such a fantastic library to our city. I've always tried to represent each and every one of you to the best of my abilities, and Camarillo continues to improve. We have passed on time a $125 million budget. St. John's Pleasant Valley Hospital is in the midst of constructing a new 72,000 square foot tower. We anticipate the opening in 2018. Mixed-use projects in Old Town are currently being built on Ventura Boulevard. We're currently in negotiations for the fire station with St. Mary Magdalene. We are in the midst of a very aggressive overlay and slurry seal program to help our traffic flow and our infrastructure here. We work very closely with the Chamber of Commerce to improve our job base here, which is growing by leaps and bounds. We have new companies that are willing to relocate with high-paying jobs. And I've been proud and honored to serve with you. Camarillo is fiscally stable. It has proven leadership. I have the energy, the ideas, and an open philosophy to make Camarillo the best city in the county.
Thank you, Mr. Kildee. Mr. Lingle, you're going to have the first question. The City Council recently voted to reduce water restrictions from a Stage 2 to a Stage 1 as the governor lifted the mandatory conservation methods. How would you have voted on this issue and why?
So that is a really tough one, because on the one hand, we want to conserve water as much as possible. On the other hand, the city had made the argument that we were losing about, I believe it was 2 trees a day. And so we want trees. We like trees. We want to keep trees living in Camarillo. If I was going to make that decision, I probably would not have voted to ease the restrictions on water. The fact is, we're still in a drought, and currently we're building about 2,000 homes in the pipeline. I think we have to assume that the houses being built in Camarillo are going to last as long as this drought until we have a solution for the water issue. Our water security is really uncertain right now, and so we have to do everything we can to address that before we start easing restrictions or moving forward by using more water, both for the city and for the people that live here.
Thank you. Mr. Little, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I understand the question. Well, I would vote for it because I did in city council. And I did because, unlike Mr. Lingo, who worries about the trees but doesn't want to give water to them, we did that primarily to loosen up the use of water we could use for the landscaping of this city. That was one reason. The other was to we have been in a conservation mode for 6 or 7 years, far longer than some cities. And as a result, because we were in a conservation mode, we weren't penalized to drop 25, 30% in water usage in 2015. We were only required to drop 20%. And we did. We made that goal. Today we're using 1,900 cubic or acre feet less as a city than we did in 2013. Now, I can't remember how many gallons are in an acre foot, but there's a lot of them. And we've saved 1,900 cubic acre feet. The other thing that I would have voted for is because during the course of the last year, we have put into place a great number of regulations, as well as changes of the plumbing code and building codes, landscaping codes, to encourage conservation, and in cases of new houses to require it. And we've also made sure that development would not take water away from the existing users by requiring that every developer that comes forward must bring water to the table, the same amount of water that his project would use every year, and it's got to be a permanent savings in the city. So I think we've made a lot of changes, and so we could do it 10%. Next year we may have to go back to 20%. I don't know. Let's pray that we get some rain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Mr. Lormer.
I would have not basically lifted the restrictions. You know, in life, you have to use common sense. Just this week, it was 104. I know it because I was with my mom at a place in Camarillo, and it was extremely hot. We don't know what the future is going to bring, so the idea that all of a sudden you just get off of it, and we know, for example, that it's hard to get people to conserve water as it is. And by the way, you know, we have obviously they have a toilet replacement program. We've asked people to kill their lawns to go completely dry. We've asked people to do several things. They're not supposed to use water when they clean their coaches, different things. But when you look at the drought, it's been ongoing for a number of years. I don't know about you, but I haven't seen any forecast saying there's rain going to be hitting this area or other parts of California. Again, Upper California, if it rains, or different parts, it flows down to this side. But again, you always in life, you want to rule with caution because you already know that we've had problems. And the idea all of a sudden you want to get everybody off the habit. What if it doesn't rain this summer? What if it doesn't rain next summer? And then you're going to go back, and you know what it is once people are used to doing things a certain way, it's kind of hard to turn that ship 180 degrees. So I think we should have ruled on caution. I don't think we should have said just, hey, everybody get off, and we'll just hope there's rain. That's not a way to be prudent. That's not the way to be responsible for setting a policy for the community or businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lorimer. Mr. Kildee.
Yes, we had a thorough discussion on this at the council, and I did vote yes. And it's simply because I think we have asked a lot of our residents for the last years. As a matter of fact, we kept our tiered system water rates in effect even when we weren't in a drought. And that's one of the reasons why we were only asked to cut back 20% and perhaps not 30 or 35 or 40% on that. We did not ask our residents to completely eliminate watering. What we did ask them to do is to water for 3 days a week in the stage 2. Now we're asking, instead of a 20% cutback, which I'm proud to say our citizens reached, we're asked for a 10% cutback. So we added an extra day of watering here. This is actually the second time that we've had a low-flow toilet rebate program. We've, on our website, if you look, there's drought-tolerant plants that people can do. Many citizens in our city have converted their front yards into more drought-tolerant plants. Camarillo citizens always step up to what's being asked of them, and that's why I'm so proud to represent them on the city council. Yes, we are still in a drought. We're going to have to monitor this. We will continue to monitor this. If we do have to make some adjustments, we will. But at this particular point, if you look at the city, some of the shrubberies for our trees, which we were losing several per week, they're getting in better shape. Many of the lawns and various things in people's yards are starting to come back here. We're certainly far from being out of the woods here, but this is a step in the right direction, and that's why I voted in favor of this.
Thank you. Mr. Tremblay.
I would have voted yes. On balance, it was a correct decision by the council. The bottom line here is that when you look at water issues, you have to strike a balance between water supply and demand. And you look at those constraints, you look at the elasticity of the supply and demand, and you ask yourself, what's the most prudent thing to do under the existing facts and under the existing circumstances? But because the council voted yes, doesn't mean that we don't have to continue to pay absolute attention to what's going on. I would favor two things. First of all, to stay with aggressive water conservation features and building code and other measures that the City Council has put into effect. I also am a proponent of the North Valley or the North Pleasant Valley desalter project, which my understanding was at least tentatively approved by the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency earlier this week. Now, there are issues attendant to that desalter, which, as you all know, would extract shallow groundwater, which has been impacted by total dissolved solids or high chlorides, utilize reverse osmosis, treat that water, and then utilize it to blend with our existing groundwater and state water that we receive. We take about 42% of groundwater in the city, or 42% of the city's supply is through groundwater and 58% is through state water. Again, we have to go back to balance. People have made sacrifices. As I've walked literally thousands of homes in Camarillo, that's been one of the resonant messages, that we've made sacrifices. And people have utilized that as a bridge to say we also have to pay attention to growth and development. So this is all a matter of balance. And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected to City Council, that's the type of analysis that I will bring to my duties.
Thank you, Mr. Tremblay. Mr. Little, the second question. The Ventura County Transportation Commission has placed on the ballot a half-cent sales tax measure, Measure AA. Do you favor the tax increase to help fix our roads?
Well, I'm a member of VCTC. I represent the city on that body, and we did a great deal of study before we ever came forward with the proposal that's on the ballot. Yes, I do favor it, primarily because as someone who's kind of a pragmatist, I've looked around and see if well, first of all, we got a 101 freeway that is becomes kind of gridlock starting about, now it used to start about 5 o'clock, now it starts about 3:30, maybe 3 o'clock. And I look at that and say, we need to improve this road, how are we going to do it? And it's going to cost about $900 million to do the complete road, widening it to 4 lanes and with auxiliary lanes between intersections, interchanges. And there's no money for that in the community. State highway funds have been going down because the gasoline has been going down in terms of demand. Because of electric cars and hybrids and so forth. The gas tax, which has been relied on for 100 years in this country to fund highways, is just declining. The Congress can't fund it any longer with just strictly highway funds, gas tax funds. They have to use general government revenues to help fund the highway program. So what we are asking for is a half-cent sales tax. It will cost everyone that use about $40, $50 a year. About 30% of it will be paid for by people coming through and doing business in Ventura County. And it will, over a period of time, rebuild the freeways and help the cities build their structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Mr. Lormer.
I'm opposed to Measure AA, and here's why. If you read the measure on keepvcmoving.org, first of all, it talked about a sound wall. It talked about water runoff. I called Alan, a gentleman who's in charge of that, and he said there's nothing on the books to build center lanes far as rideshare. I got to tell you, this is the most ridiculous thing that's come across, and politicians are pushing it. You know, only 20% goes to the freeway. It's a 30-year tax. And 50% goes to the city. You already pay taxes for services. This week, when we had other debates, Kevin and other people up here, Bill, said, you know, hey, they're fixing the roads, sorry for the inconvenience. So you ask yourself, why do we need more taxes? You know, when you look at this, there's another bad thing about it. There's a caveat in there. 2/3, they notify the public within 45 days, 2/3 of that committee can increase at any time. 30 years for a tax? It's ridiculous. And let's remind ourselves something else here. The LA Times said they're going to they're talking about raising the gas tax 18 cents. You already pay taxes. This is the most ridiculous tax I've ever seen come across. Only 20% would go to the freeways. If Howard Jarvis was alive, he'd be screaming. This is not a good approach. It'd be one thing if it was a 5 or 6 year tax and 80% was going to the freeways, but most of the public that I've talked to says it's ridiculous. You know, what has VCTC done to promote rideshare? You know, they've only promoted it from the 3rd to the 9th, once a year. They haven't done anything to promote rideshare. If you talk to companies locally, they will tell you that nobody's even visited them. So the idea that this is a good tax, it's not. It is what it is. It's a horrible tax. Remember, only 20% it goes to the freeways, 50% goes to the city. You ask yourself a question, how does that math work? It doesn't work. I ask you to vote against that, Measure AA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lormer. Mr. Kildee.
Well, I support this, and as a collector of sales tax, we've collected sales tax for the state of California for over 60 years. I understand that. And I have to also remind everybody it's a sales tax. You don't pay it unless you buy something. 50%, yes, is going to be allocated to the city, and the rest is allocated to the regional roads. The feeling is it's going to raise about $1.65 billion after 30 years. It does sunset after 30 years. We are at 7.5% sales tax now. There's many, many cities in California that are higher than that. This will go up from 7.5% to 8%. There are many cities in the LA that are approaching 10% on this. So we have to remember that. The average Ventura County resident spends 23 hours stuck in traffic in our county. We can do better than this. You can imagine all the lost productivity with that. The average Ventura County resident will pay somewhere between $30 and $50 extra per year. And another thing that this will allow it to do is the money that it generates, they can actually take that and use that as a base and borrow even more money to improve our roads even more. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, nobody up here is in favor of a tax, but I don't see any other way that we can improve our traffic without this. It's locally controlled and operated here. In my opinion, it's a small price to pay for a relatively large benefit. I encourage everybody to go out and really try to talk this initiative up and see if we can pass it. One of the few counties in Southern California that does not have this. It's not an end-all, but it's a step in the right direction.
Thank you, Mr. Kildee. Mr. Tremblay.
I support Measure AA, and the reason is that, first of all, I don't like taxes, and I don't like tax increases. But right now, Measure AA is the only feasible solution on the ballot during this election cycle. I don't want to wait for another 2 years to address the mess on Highway 101. The freeways are supposed to move people, goods, and services, and do so in an efficient manner. Right now, Highway 101 at many times of the day is not moving people, nor goods, nor services in an efficient way. What does that impact? That impacts our economy. It has adverse impacts on our air quality, and consequently, we all suffer for that. To state that perhaps the deal could have been cut a different way, but as a candidate said, 20% of the funds go to the freeway. But that is not 20%, that's not just 20% in isolation. Not only will there be direct funds from the sales tax, there will also be leveraged funds that VCTC and the county will be able to obtain from both state and federal sources. And so you add those leverage funds on top of the direct funds, and there will be a good amount of money available to do the Highway 101 improvements that we so desperately need. The other thing, I've had a number of employers during this campaign ask me about other things that might be done with that money. And one of the things that I'm particularly intrigued by is to strengthen the transit services between our communities, between Camarillo and Oxnard, Camarillo and Ventura, et cetera. And they note to me that there is a real lack of intercity bus service and coordinated intercity bus services for their employees. So that's another positive impact from this.
Thank you. Mr. Lingle.
So my wife and I are pretty privileged to be in our early 30s, and we bought a house in Camarillo about a year and a half ago. We bought a house on Dunnigan, which is right off of our Neal. And every once in a while, I'll head over to Target, and instead of taking daily, I'll get on the freeway, and I will be stuck. I will be sitting there, and I'm like, why didn't I take daily? So not only does the traffic congestion in Camarillo affect the quality of life for the people that live here, but the EDC says that it's the #1 threat to our economic future in Camarillo and Ventura County. I think we need to widen some of the bridges that go over the freeway in Camarillo. We need an auxiliary lane. And I agree, I don't want to raise the tax burden on any of the people that live in the city of Camarillo. However, we need to leverage the federal and state funds that will be matched in the county to improve this awful traffic congestion. So Measure AA is the only plan on the books that does that. And that's why I'm going to be voting yes on Measure AA.
Thank you, Mr. Lingle. Mr. Lorimer, you're going to start with the third question. The fire station in Old Town has been an eyesore for many years. what would you suggest be done with the building and Dizdar Park?
Well, let's start with that issue. The firehouse was bought for about $150,000. The park was bought for $1 million. And your council that's been on here for over 100 years, if you combine them 100 plus, you know, they had many opportunities. And you know what they wanted to do with that? This is taxpayer money. They wanted to open a restaurant. So they had people come down here, and they looked at the property. I was sitting in the audience, and they said, you got to be kidding me. I came down here, they pitched this project to me. There's not enough demographics. That firehouse should have been dealt with a long time ago. But again, we have the same issues with a lot of issues that are not getting done as a community. The firehouse should have been gotten rid of. Right now they have an offer, but before it's been on the market for 6 months. They said on the sign they wanted a restaurant, so they kept pitching that idea. It's been for sale. They're trying to work it out with the church over there for 3 months, and they still haven't sold it. We'll be talking about this for another 20 years. The point is, what they need to do with that thing is sell it and get rid of it, because it's a blight. It's had vandalism. And think about it. Every day when you walk down that and you see that, you ask yourself, what is your